I'm going to enjoy sharing with you the prophecies that surround this pontificate of Pope Leo XIV. I'd like to first talk about why he chose that name. And I've heard some discussion about it already. Some of it is prophetic, and some of it is just somewhat mundane that you would expect from someone choosing a name of a prior pope. So, first of all, Pope Leo XIII, he promoted very strongly the teachings of St. Thomas Aquinas. And Pope Leo XIV, he took his education at the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas in Rome. And that Pontifical University is more affectionately known, you may have heard this referred to as the Angelicum. Also, one of the aspects of Pope Leo XIII's pontificate is that he was a strong advocate for the poor. And also that's something that Pope Leo XIV can relate to, where in the case of Pope Leo XIII, the world was going through the Industrial Revolution. Anytime there's a change like that, it greatly affects the poor and the marginalized who find themselves exploited. And Pope Leo XIII was very sympathetic towards that and advocated for the poor very strongly. Pope Leo XIV, Cardinal Robert Prevost, he devoted his life as a priest. As a matter of fact, he spent most of his priesthood working among the very poor in the mountains of Peru. And I'd like to point out that he's not just someone who provided lip service to the poor. He actually lived among them. He walked the walk. It's easy to talk about the poor and support them in that manner, but to give up years of your life living among them, doing manual work under very strenuous conditions, it shows a commitment that most do not have. There's something I'd like to point out also that was mentioned previously by other channels, but I want to go into it in a little bit more detail, and it's regarding the dates. The date he was elected Pope. Pope Leo XIV was elected and assumed his pontificate on May 8th, 2025. 2025, as we know, is a Jubilee year. May 8th happens to be the date that commemorates the apparition of St. Michael in Malachy in Italy. So the reason why that's important is Pope Leo XIII, and this is where we start getting into prophecy, he's also very well known for his vision of Satan and Satan asking God for 100 years where he would assume additional power. And what he asked for was additional power over people who already were in his control. And he was given this. Now, the reason why this is important, and I believe that this is a tie-in back to that, is one, Pope Leo XIII, he instituted a prayer of St. Michael, which is very well known, and said frequently by people in church. I know we do that in our Sunday Masses. So I believe that this tie-in back to Pope Leo XIII and also the date of St. Michael's apparition in Mount Gargano, I believe what this signifies is that the pontificate, Pope Leo XIV, indicates the end of this additional power that was provided to Satan. And I believe that this pontificate will also be a pontificate where you would see some of the prophetic events that were prophesied at Garabandal and by the saints regarding the warning and the miracle, that they will occur during this pontificate. Cardinal Robert Prevost is elected as a pope as a relatively young man. He's not even 70 upon his election. And he may be with us with modern medicine to help. He may be with us for 20 years easily as pope. And it's more than likely that these events occur during his pontificate. So the other very important aspect that I just stumbled upon, and I can't say I stumbled upon, I think that it was pointed out to me, but on May 8th is also the feast day of St. Peter of Tarentaise. And I'm probably mispronouncing that. It's a French name, Tarentaise. But St. Peter's feast day is on May 8th, according to the Franciscan calendar. So some people don't know that saints' calendars differ. So I have actually 4 of them that I look at. And one is a Carmelite calendar, and one's a Franciscan, and another one is what we would normally see in the diocese, a saint's calendar that has a list of many saints for each day. So I meant to go to that calendar. However, I picked the Franciscan one. On the Franciscan calendar, St. Peter of Tarentaise's feast day is on May 8th. And I'm going to tell you why that's important in a minute. But before I do that, I went into the other calendar, and I thought, well, maybe we should just be looking at when he was elected. Let's look at his birthday and see what's under his birthday. And his birthday is September 14th. And under the diocesan calendar, again appears St. Peter of Tarentaise on September 14th. So who is this St. Peter? One, if you follow prophecy, you probably relate this to Peter the Roman under St. Malachy. I'm not saying that's what it is, but take a listen to this, who St. Peter is. I'm going to read a very short passage, and this is from the Book of the Saints. St. Peter, Cistercian monk, and eventually served as abbot. In 1142, he was named Archbishop of Tarentaise, replacing a bishop who had been deposed because of corruption. That's interesting. But there's more, and this is the point that I'd like to get to. Peter tackled his new assignment with vigor. He brought reform into his diocese, replaced lax clergy, and reached out to the poor. And get this, he visited all parts of his mountainous diocese on a regular basis, just like Cardinal Robert Prevost in the mountains of Peru. He started the custom of May bread, free bread and soup distributed throughout the mountain region. This tradition continued for centuries until ended by the anti-Catholic French Revolution. So he started this custom to the poor, this outreach, and it stayed as a custom for over 600 years. But the correlation between the service of Cardinal Robert Prevost to the poor in the mountains of Peru and the service of St. Peter of Tarentaise to the poor in the mountains of France is very striking. And the fact that his feast day, St. Peter's feast day, is celebrated on Cardinal Robert Prevost, or Pope Leo XIV, let's call him Pope Leo now, Pope Leo XIV's birthday and also the day he was elected Pope also is very striking. So the other part of this I want to bring up, and this picture I mentioned, I was speaking on another channel, and I made a reference to this picture, also on my channel as well. And I found that this visit by Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, and the fact that the Pope died the next day, I found this very symbolic. However, I did not understand it at the time, and I do now. So J.D. Vance is a very good Catholic, a believing Catholic, not a Catholic in name only. Obviously, he's an American vice president, and I believe this is a precursor, a foreshadowing of what was yet to come, that a pope would be an American pope, and that the pontificate would go from Argentina to America. Not that the pontificate is out of America, but the pope is going to be an American pope. So I found that very interesting, and I believe that that is a prelude of things to come regarding this pope. And one of the reasons why I believe that is that there is a specific prophecy from St. Pio regarding the conversion of the United States. And he was asked a question about the conversion of Russia. And he said that Russia will convert, and they will convert quickly. As a matter of fact, I think we're seeing it now if we have not already seen it. But then he said that the United States would also convert, and that Russia would be an example to the United States on how to convert, but that the United States will convert much more slowly. So this conversion that St. Pio was describing, I can only think that the fact that we have an American Pope must have something to do with it. There must be something that this Pope is going to play some sort of a role in this conversion. And we have yet to see this. So the other one I just mentioned previously is Garabandal. It also occurred to me that this Pope is a Pope that may be more likely than other popes may have been to fulfill an outstanding prophecy from Garabandal, and that is a pope who would go to Moscow. So why do I say that? Well, the war between Ukraine and Russia is continuing. It seems like it'll continue despite the peace efforts that we see that's ongoing. And the United States is leading the effort for peace, or at least attempting to. And because the United States has its position in the peace process, it would make a lot of sense that a pope from the United States would be a likely candidate to go visit Moscow and join in that peace process. And if that does occur, then that is one of the prophecies that is outstanding, that is supposed to occur prior to the warning and the miracle that I mentioned before. So I'd like to talk a little bit about Robert Prevost, Pope Leo XIV. And I'm asked about that because I'm an American, and a few people have asked, what do I think of the new Pope? Well, one, he went to Villanova University, and I've known some people from there. I've worked with someone from Villanova. There's a certain character that people coming from Villanova are imbued with, and it's a very good one. They seem to be very astute they seem to be people of good character. After he graduated Villanova University, he was accepted at Harvard Law School. However, he turned it down. He turned down the acceptance from Harvard Law School, which is very prestigious, very hard to get into, and he traded that in for a life with the poor in Peru as a priest. Whereas I mentioned he spent the majority of his time during his priesthood. He also turned down a secular law degree for a canonical one, where he became a canonical lawyer. So he's very intelligent man. And he's someone that I feel is going to speak clearly regarding the faith. I don't think he's going to stumble around. I don't think he's going to contradict himself or the faith. I think he's going to be someone who is very Christocentric. So a few things that I've heard, I cannot confirm it, but I've heard things like he feels that the fiducia supplicans, which was very controversial regarding the blessings to regular relationships, he believes that that should be a decision deferred to by the bishops. And as we know, many bishops rejected that. And many more just quietly refused to enact it. So I believe that's a good sign. He's also pro-life. He's also been indicated to have no issues with traditional masses. And those who attend traditional masses have felt in the past that they were being persecuted, especially since there was a papal document regarding Traditionis Custodes, which was a document that provided restrictions, making it more difficult to attend that Mass. And that's good, because that heals wounds within the Catholic family, because these are just people who are Catholic and wish to attend a traditional Mass. So I believe that Pope Leo XIV, regarding the faith, his understanding of it, what's going to be his teaching of it, is more aligned with Cardinal Erdo from Hungary. And that his views on social matters, I think, are perceived to be more aligned with Pope Francis' idea of social matters, especially as it pertains to the poor and the marginalized. Now, there are challenges also, and I want to talk about some challenges and what's next as well. So one of the challenges we find ourselves in today is that the church and the teaching of the faith is getting intertwined with politics. So what do I mean by that? Well, in the case of, say, global warming, as an example, climate, the church teaches that we must be good stewards. However, it doesn't teach that we should support every climate or environmental initiative that's enacted by the United Nations. And some of these do not have the best interests of the environment or the people in mind. A lot of it is done politically, and the agenda is utilized against the people to control them and to further tax them. So we must consider the political aspect of it and divest ourselves from that political aspect. In other words, we should not be promoting the political side of the environment, but we should be supporting the environment as good stewards, as the church requests us to do. So there's also a concern about the liberation theology from South America that's really Marxism, that is rebranded and is very popular there, and how much that Cardinal Prevost was exposed to it. And I think he's astute enough to know the difference between Marxism and providing support for the poor. But in this liberation theology, it's a theology that is really political as its basis. And it's another case of the church being intertwined with politics. And there's really no place for Marxism in the Catholic Church. Marxism is not a support of the poor. Marxism is an exploitation of the poor. So we've had a situation with a number of priests and prelates who've been removed, perhaps unjustly, from their service. And one of them is an American bishop, Bishop Strickland. And there's a couple others that are well known. One is Bishop Ray, and another one is Fernandez. Bishop Ray being from France, and Bishop Fernandez from Puerto Rico, where they've been removed from their assignments. Now, in the case of Bishop Strickland, which I can speak to with a bit more knowledge because I'm familiar with him, he's a bishop that is extremely popular in the United States. He's probably the most beloved bishop in the United States. So if you did a poll of Catholics, especially Catholics that pay any attention, or Catholics that go to Mass at least, and you say, who's your favorite bishop? Well, it would be Bishop Strickland. And he was removed from his assignment in a very harsh manner. Now, there's been some attacks against Pope Leo because he was the bishop of the dicastery of bishops. So he has some responsibility in the removal of these bishops. But the fact that it was done without a canonical hearing as well, that tells me that can only be done by the Pope. So it may not have been his decision. But, however, when I'm referring to challenges, I'm saying, what's next? What needs to be done in this pontificate? Well, there needs to be some healing here. And if it was unjust to remove Bishop Strickland, then give him an assignment. If you disagree with me, then fine. At least give him a canonical hearing, which he should have received, and let that determine whether he should receive a new assignment or not. And the same with the other bishops that I mentioned. The other case is Father Frank Pavone. Again, the most beloved priest probably in the United States. Very strong advocate for pro-life. And the thinking is that's why he was removed. But not just removed. He was laicized. Again, very harshly. Very harsh sentence against such a good priest. Once more, no canonical hearing, which they're supposed to receive. I've heard Father Frank Pavone say that he submitted his application to get that decision reversed. If you don't want to override the decision and provide him faculties, at least give him a canonical hearing, which he should have received in the first place. That would at least introduce some justice and fairness into this. The other case I want to bring up, Bishop Strickland mentioned that he was never really given a valid reason why he was being removed from his assignment. Again, at least give him a hearing. I'm saying that they're challenges. Let's look at them as opportunities. Opportunities for healing, opportunities to perhaps clear up some confusion. There's a couple dubias out there that are outstanding and never answered. There was a dubia regarding the excesses of the synod, and these were submitted by cardinals. They never received a response as they should. I don't have to say to most people that the Pope is a servant of the servants of God. And if there's confusion about anything, whether it be the excess of synod or anything like that, and cardinals are submitting a dubia, which is a question, basically, and they have a question and they wish to receive an answer so that they can understand and they can support their own flock as shepherds of the souls of people. The other one's the dubia regarding Amoris Laetitia and the provision of communion to those who have received civil divorces. The same applies to that dubia. We need an answer. I'm not sure if the process is they need to resubmit the dubia because it's a new pontificate, but it's something that needs to be done. If a cardinal has questions, then you can bet that priests, lay people also have questions. So it would be great to answer them. So I'd like to end by saying that it's going to be very important to see the actions, the first actions of this pontificate. And I perhaps became a bit cynical from the last pontificate, where I started not listening to what was being said, but paying attention to the actions and giving them a lot more weight than the words. So the actions regarding who he decides to nominate to serve in dicasteries, who gets promoted to cardinal, decisions made on matters such as these that I mentioned regarding people that have been removed from their position without due cause, or at least providing the reason or canonical hearing, dubias that are outstanding. Basically, we have a confused flock regarding these dubias and other matters. So look at it this way. The new pontiff is a shepherd of a flock that's scattered. And this flock must be united together again and united in the faith. I want to thank you for watching, and God bless.